From the station working for you, this is ABC 27 News High Definition.
He's accused of molesting 10 boys over 14 years, and today he faced at least one of his alleged victims in court.
We have live team coverage from Bellefonte. Good evening, everyone. I'm Flora Pastorero.
I'm Valerie Pritchett. Opening statements began today in Center County.
We also heard powerful testimony from alleged victim number 4. Now, we want to warn you, some of this testimony is graphic.
Our live team coverage begins with Dennis Owens in Bellefonte.
Well, guys, the ABC 27 censors and editors are going to have to work overtime on this one. Graphic descriptions of sexual activity, and a boy was flying around the courtroom here in Center County today in Bellefonte. More on that in a moment, but the day began with opening statements where two men began trying to make their case to the jury. 21st century technology is dwarfing this 19th century courthouse, and two Joes, originally from Philly, roughly the same age, took center stage in Center County. Prosecutor McGettigan put the pictures of 8 boys on a screen and told the jury about them as people. Heretofore only known by their victim number, they are now personalized for the jury. Defense attorney Amendola combated that, calling them, quote, troubled kids, and saying they're in a conspiracy for the money. The Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape resents that.
Most people don't put themselves under the microscope for the entire world to look at their personal lives just to get some money. The reality is offenders target troubled kids.
Amendola said Sandusky loved the kids but didn't violate them. Several times he called this case daunting. The attorney for victim 5 agrees.
You have not of 1, not of 2, not of 5, but of 8 young men who are going to testify, all standing individually, all putting their hand on the Bible, and all sworn to tell the truth.
A couple of Joes laid out the case. It will now play out historically at a place that's no stranger to history. And right after opening statements, the prosecution jumped right in, calling to the stand the man known as victim number 4. He had gut-wrenching testimony, spoke for about 4 hours, was on the stand for about 4 hours. That testimony just wrapped up. Kendra Nichols was in the courtroom. Basically, pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, very graphic, as you mentioned. Now, victim 4 told us when he was with Jerry Sandusky around other people that he was treated as, but when they were alone, he says Jerry Sandusky treated him like his girlfriend. Now, victim 4, a 27-year-old male from Center County, met Sandusky when he was 13 years old through the 2nd mile.
The prosecution does rest for now. The state took 4 days to lay out its case against Jerry Sandusky. 8 accusers took the stand and each gave disturbing testimony. And in team coverage tonight, we are going to look ahead to whether Penn State has left itself open to major civil lawsuits. Dennis Owens and Kendra Nichols are bringing us live team coverage. We turn it over to them now, guys.
Well, it is a 3-day weekend for the Sandusky jurors and for the Sandusky defense team, and by all appearances, they will need the extra work. The prosecution basically ending a very powerful case with another day of powerful testimony.
That's right, Dennis. The last 3 accusers taking the stands today. The first one to testify this morning was actually the first victim to report abuse to Penn State University. That was back in 1998.
Jerry betrayed each and every one of these boys, each and every one of them. It was a betrayal that was colossal.
The last 3 accusers took the stand today. Victim 6 says he was 11 years old, only showered with Sandusky once. His chest hair was next to my face. It was icky. It was enough to tell his mom. They reported it to police. When confronted by the mother, Sandusky reportedly said, "I wish I could ask for your forgiveness. I know I won't get it from you. I wish I was dead." No charges were filed. Victim 3 says he was 12 years old and remembers Sandusky fondling him and rubbing him, both in the basement of the Sandusky home and in the showers at Penn State.
He was extremely apprehensive about coming forward on such a public stage and talking about such private, personal matters.
And the last to take the stand, victim 9, now 18, he told the jurors between the ages of 12 and 15, Sandusky would sexually assault and rape him on multiple times in the basement of Sandusky's home, saying one time he screamed. He believes Sandusky's wife was upstairs. No one came down. The defense still seems to be pushing the theory the men are working together based on their similar stories. The victim's attorneys say,
"Gee, why do you think that is? In cases where you're dealing with a serial predator, a serial abuser, whether it's a serial murderer, a serial rapist, a serial child abuser, there's a pattern."
Now this afternoon, victim 9 was the last accuser to take the stand. The moment that stuck out to me, Dennis, is the court asked him to point out who his abuser was. He pointed at Jerry Sandusky, would not make eye contact, saying, "I do not want to look at him."
We have listened for 4 days, and basically the picture the prosecution has painted has some very similar things. Boys, young boys, showers, Jerry Sandusky, and Penn State facilities. Sandusky's accused of abusing boys on Penn State campus several times, and according to testimony in this courthouse this week, at least 3 times, Penn State officials were told of Sandusky's behavior and did nothing about it. 1998, victim 6's mother calls Penn State police complaining about Sandusky showering with her son on campus. 2000, a university janitor agitatedly describes to his superiors seeing victim 8 assaulted by Sandusky in a Penn State shower. 2001, Mike McQuarrie makes clear to his superiors that he saw something horrible and bad between Sandusky and a boy in a locker room shower. 3 strikes. But Sandusky wasn't out at Penn State.
The Penn State police, the Penn State authorities, everyone from the vice president of the university to the janitor in the shower room who cleaned the urinals knew about Mr. Sandusky, and they failed to do anything.
The once pristine brand has been tarnished. The blue and white will be shelling out lots of green to the victims who testified in Center County this week. How much? Unknown at this point. But prominent civil attorneys are lined up to make sure PSU pays up.
In my opinion, Penn State is an enabler, and enablers are responsible along with the perpetrator that they enable.
So this trial is not just about one man accused of doing terrible things to boys. A university also stands accused of not doing enough to protect them.
I believe that not only Penn State, but the universities across this country will learn a lesson from this, that they will establish policies, and it will prove that something good can come out of something bad.
No, Jerry Sandusky, the former Penn State coach, did not take the stand to defend himself before his counsel rested his case today.
That means the stage is now set for closing arguments tomorrow. Then it's up to the jury to decide. Dennis Owens is live in Bellefonte. He's kicking off our live team coverage. Dennis.
Well, the defense rested, the prosecution rested. It was an unusually early day here in Bellefonte today. We heard from character witnesses, 2 mid-staters testified, but the headline is about the man who didn't take the stand. We have certainly seen a lot of Jerry Sandusky for 2 weeks. His arrival and his departure from the courthouse have been dutifully recorded. But the man at the center of this case will be seen and not heard.
The only person who could have come forward and said this didn't happen in this particular case under these circumstances was Mr. Sandusky, and he chose not to do it.
Connie Boland is an elementary school counselor who sent numerous kids to Sandusky's Second Mile charity. She revered the coach until boys testified to being terribly abused by him. She's a Penn State grad and a lifelong resident, and she was here to see the man defend himself.
I'd like to see him look me in the eye and say I didn't do it, because I couldn't believe it. I don't think I could believe it.
Well, as the jury continues to deliberate in the Jerry Sandusky case, a major development has occurred that they will not hear about. One of Sandusky's adopted sons has issued a statement saying he too was a victim. A short time ago, his lawyer issued this statement. It says, during the trial, Matt Sandusky contacted us and requested our advice and assistance in arranging a meeting with prosecutors to disclose for the first time in this case that he is a victim of Jerry Sandusky's abuse. And we are told Matt Sandusky was prepared to testify as a witness for the prosecution. Of course, that did not happen. Now, a couple things to remind you of about Matt. His biological mother expressed concern for her son, who began living at the Sandusky home in State College in 1995. She says Jerry Sandusky showered her son with presents and was unusually close to him. Also, Matt Sandusky's ex-wife went so far as to get a court order keeping Jerry Sandusky away from her and Matt's children. Well, the Sandusky jury began deliberating at 1:20 this afternoon. They're scheduled to take a 1-hour dinner break starting right now as they methodically consider each of the remaining 48 counts. Our Dennis Owens begins our live team coverage from the Center County Courthouse in Bellefonte. Dennis.
Let's bring you right up to speed. As you just said, the jurors, like a lot of our viewers, are enjoying dinner. They'll do that to 7, but we are told they will come back to deliberate at 7 o'clock, working into the night. The schedule is theirs. About an hour ago, the Matt Sandusky bombshell was all the buzz here on Press Row. That is a bombshell jurors will not hear. They did hear this morning, however, judge's instructions. Among the things he told them was that it is not a crime for a man to touch or shower with a boy. It does not become a crime, he said, unless the man's intent is sexual gratification. Defense attorney Joe Amendola then began his closing argument. He said investigators didn't follow the evidence, they steered the evidence. He said the Commonwealth decided early on that Sandusky was guilty and then set about proving it. Joe Amendola addressed the gorilla in the room, asking the jury, why would so many people say so many terrible things if they weren't true? He spent 70 minutes trying to explain. The boys knew each other, he said, and told similar stories because police coached them. And he pointed to civil attorneys in the courtroom and said, they're looking for a payday. He said several victims didn't complain or allege abuse until this story broke. Then their stories changed, starting as fondling over the clothes, but with coaching, he alleges their stories got more graphically sexual. An assistant coach at Penn State is too busy to be spending afternoons playing racquetball and assaulting boys in showers. It doesn't make sense, Amendola insisted. If the state's to be believed, Sandusky decided to become a pedophile in his mid-50s. Does that make sense, he asked? Amendola addressed that Costas interview, saying Jerry sounded bad because he was honest and truthful in his answers. Yes, he's attracted to young boys, but throughout denied the sexual part. He said Mike McQuarrie assumed that he saw sex when in fact he did not. If Sandusky is such a monster and a danger to society, why did the investigation drag on for 3 years? Why wasn't he arrested earlier? Why wasn't a 1998 case prosecuted? Amendola asked. And why did accusers visit the Sanduskys years after their alleged abuse? If there was such a rotation of assaulted boys in and out of their house, why did Dottie never see it? Amendola pointed at Sandusky and said if he did this, he should rot in jail for the rest of his life. But then a final question. What if he didn't do this? And by my count, it was at least a dozen times Amendola said it just doesn't make sense, trying to raise some doubt in the mind of jurors. But the last word went to prosecutors. Jeannie Flittner here now with that.
That's right. And you know, it's interesting because I was watching the jurors when Amendola was talking and they seemed very focused on what he was saying. Then I watched them when the prosecutor was talking and they seemed focused on what he was saying, but maybe a little bit more moved in that situation.
Joe McGettigan kept it simple. He first shot down the defense's theories that victims are making this up for money and that police investigators pressured them to say things that weren't true. McGettigan said 2 of Mr. Amendola's theories are in a collision course, saying how could victims seeking money need to be convinced to make those claims? He said even Sandusky's own wife, Dottie, couldn't explain in her testimony why the victims would make this up. McGettigan also talked about Mike McQuarrie. He said he's been judged for how he reacted to seeing Sandusky showering with a boy. But for jurors to know, he didn't understand the shock he felt. McGettigan said he needs to speak up for the victim who has never been identified in that incident. He asked jurors, how could Sandusky remember McQuarrie walking in on him, but not who he was in the shower with? He told the jurors he didn't need to add to the cruelty of the case, saying the testimony should make Sandusky's guilt clear to them. You saw a serial, predatory pedophile. He walked up to Sandusky and told the jurors to send him to jail.
And they were strong words in those closing arguments. The jurors, like I said, they seemed moved, but we'll have to wait and see if the Commonwealth proved that case to them.
Beyond
a reasonable doubt.
And, you know, both guys were effective, but now it's in the hands of the jury. Alicia, they are on dinner break. They say they're coming back at 7 o'clock. We're going to be here for as long as they're here tonight, and we're told we're going to get about a 20-minute heads up if there's a verdict. The minute we hear that there is a verdict, we're going on the air. We're going to stay on the air so we know what that verdict is. Alicia, that's the story from Belfont.
Stick with ABC 27. We are on it.
This is an ABC 27 special report.
Well, good evening to you. I'm Alicia Richards, joining you with some breaking news for the Jerry Sandusky child sex abuse trial. We have a verdict, and for that reason, and because this is such a huge case, we are going to be staying with you until we hear what that verdict is. The jury has reached a verdict in one of the most talked about cases in Pennsylvania history. Of course, it is that of the 68-year-old former Penn State defensive coordinator, charged, as you know, with sexually abusing 10 boys, 8 of whom came forward and testified in this case. We do want to mention to you that as we discuss this case, you're going to be hearing adult subject matter that will not be appropriate for young children. Look, in the end, the jury had to consider 48 charges against Sandusky. When you consider that they began deliberating in the afternoon yesterday, you need to know that many trials like this will go on and on longer. In the scheme of things, and we'll bring in some law experts to tell us what they think, but this seems like a pretty quick verdict to me. Okay, we've got our Allie Lanyon standing by now right there at the Center County Courthouse. Allie, what a night this is going to be.
What, and I literally, Alicia, things just came to life. If you can see behind me this gathering storm of reporters from all across the country. Things were really dark here about 2 minutes ago, and all of a sudden the lights just fired up, everybody knowing that in fact they believe the jury has reached a verdict in this case. Let's talk about anxiously awaiting this verdict. Inside the courtroom, things have really been picking up tonight. Our Jeannie Flitner is inside the courtroom right now. Jeannie, paint the picture for us. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Allie, I'm standing literally in the doorway out of consideration. The courtroom is absolutely lighting up. Reporters making sure members of their staff know the recent update. I literally watched the email go out. The man who was writing the email was sitting just a seat behind me. This means the verdict has been reached. In about 20 minutes, Mr. Sandusky will be in the courtroom. His lawyer, Carl Rominger, is actually standing right near me. It looks like people are setting up and in place. Like I said, 20 minutes, court will convene. The judge will call court to order. The jury will walk in. They will read the verdict. And as soon as they do, Allie, I will be literally running down those stairs and meeting up to you. So officially, we are just getting the notice from the sheriff that now we need to stop transmitting because court is about to be in session. So I'm going to let you go, but I will meet up with you as soon as possible.
You can probably see the podium behind us. We just had a mic check, I believe, a few minutes ago. Photographers, including our ABC 27 photographers, anxiously awaiting someone will step to the podium. We assume they will once this announcement is made, but the buzz in Bellefonte, it's incredible right now. It really is.
Unbelievable. And there's us here on the outside, and of course, then there's the reporters on the inside of the courtroom. And how this is going to work, we were given a 20-minute warning for the verdict. I would say that was about 20 minutes ago.
I would agree.
About 20 minutes ago. So it is quite possible that they are beginning to hear the verdict right now.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you for 1 second.
Got something going on.
We're going to Jeannie Flitner at the Center County Courthouse. Jeannie.
All right, Jeannie, tell us.
Alicia, Jerry Sandusky has been convicted of the sexual assault of children, overwhelmingly. Every single victim, they did find guilt on some, if not all of the charges. I need to look at the numbers again. I believe I've only counted 3 cases where he was not guilty. Even the
3 counts, correct?
3 counts.
3 counts.
Every single victim, they have found guilt. He's on his way to the Center County Jail.
So they did decide to put him in handcuffs.
He will be handcuffed. When he walked out of the room, he waved at Dottie. He walked out. They did not handcuff him yet. They said he will undergo an evaluation by the Sexual Association Board before his sentencing, which would be in about 90 days. Ellie, you just heard behind me.
Cheers.
A loud applause.
Just around,
everybody seems to be happy. It was an amazing energy, and I don't say that in a happy way.
Right.
It was an energy that was very big in that room. One of the victims was sitting in there that I could recognize. When they read the verdict, he just put his head down. Jerry Sandusky did not break down to tears, but he did stand as they read all of the verdict.
Sandusky is coming out the back of the Center County Courthouse. It looks to me like he's in handcuffs, although I can't see. Yeah, he's in handcuffs. He's being escorted.
That would be standard procedure.
Probably out to a sheriff's car, and they will take him
I will tell you,
to the prison. Yes, go ahead, Ellie.
He's going to the Center County Correctional Facility tonight. That's as the judge ordered. His defense lawyer, after this overwhelming guilt, did ask the judge if he could stay on house arrest. And the judge, without hesitation, said, bail is revoked.
I think you would have seen a really strong reaction from people here in Bellefonte, from people in State College, if the judge decided not to send him to jail tonight and allowed him to remain free. I think you would have seen a terrible reaction from the community if that was allowed to happen.
And I'm just going to remind you, if people are just tuning in, Jerry Sandusky is now a convicted sexual predator.
And you guys, I want to point out
you know,
what a fall from grace this has been. The man we are looking at right now was the man who created Linebacker U. I mean, people said he was a defensive coaching genius. He came up with these amazing plays. He absolutely had a huge hand in making Penn State football what it was. Little did we know what this would come to, not only for Jerry Sandusky, but for Joe Paterno.
You know, something that struck me with what Jeannie said, talking about the victim in the courtroom. She said this isn't a happy day for anybody. And I think the victim's reaction in the courtroom just proves that. You know, here justice was served for him. He's not fist pumping or smiling and clapping. He's hanging his head. And that just talks about, you know, how hard it was for these victims to come forward. Even when justice is served, I mean, they're still hurting, they're still struggling, and even, you know, you would think maybe they'd be joyous, and maybe some part of them is, but, you know, they
had to relive it again.
They had to relive it again.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, that to me just said something right there, because we heard all the cheers outside, but there's somebody that lived this, and he's not cheering. Yeah. It's still very painful.
Well, it's fascinating to watch the action around the Center County Courthouse right now.
These men and women, along with many other agents, troopers, investigators, attorneys, and other staff of the Attorney General's Office of Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania State Police have worked tirelessly for the last few years to bring these charges to light, to bring this case to court, and to see the day that this defendant, a serial child predator who committed horrific acts upon his victims, causing lifelong and life-changing consequences for all of them, has been held accountable for his crimes.
What do you make of this reaction?
Well, obviously, what you heard is consistent with what's going on from the beginning of this case. When Jerry was arrested, there was a tidal wave of belief among the public and the media that he was guilty. We said that from the beginning, that we had a tremendous uphill battle. I used the phrase, we're trying to climb Mount Everest from the bottom of the hill, and obviously we didn't make it. So we always knew it was going to be a very difficult case. 10 sets of charges. We were really fighting 10 cases here. 8 accusers came into court and said, Jerry did this to me. We had a defense. We presented it. I don't think we could have presented it any better. And obviously the jury decided, so we have to live with their verdict.
So their main arguments for appeal, we're hearing time, hearsay with victim 8. Also, they're saying some prejudicial closing arguments, a statement made about Sandusky not taking the stand. Your thoughts on that? Do they have grounds for appeal? What do you think?
I want to answer first the question about the time, the continuance. The courts have said repeatedly, and our Supreme Court has said, that the trial court has a great deal of discretion in granting a continuance or denying it. And in this case, they were given a great deal of latitude. They were given materials well in advance of trial that they ordinarily wouldn't have gotten. The grand jury material, the judge could have said legally, you don't get this until after the witness testifies on direct examination. And the judge chose to give it to them weeks in advance. And so I don't think that's a very good issue on appeal.
Allie, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you made news tonight with getting Linda Kelly to say Dottie Sandusky was never under investigation. I think that was news. Great job to both of you. Allie Lanyon, Jeannie Fletner, thank you so much for your hard work. You got a lot of amazing interviews tonight. Well, let's just summarize it quickly and then we'll wrap up here. Jerry Sandusky has been found guilty of 45 of the 48 counts against him. Overwhelming guilt. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. He'll be officially sentenced within the next 90 days. Kendra, you spent a lot of time in the courtroom. Your final thoughts?
You know, Alicia, my thoughts go to the victims tonight. You know, we heard the Attorney General say, don't let this fade. I think for them, justice served. Again, will they sleep better tonight? And also, will this help them heal? That's where my thoughts are.
Awesome. Well, our coverage will continue. Of course, Good Morning America, and then our newscast is on with James Crummell at 9 a.m. So, and as always, really I have to say our website has been full of great, complete information on this case. If you want to look there, feel free, abc27.com. Thank you for staying with us. It's been a big night. And we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for being here.
This is an ABC 27 special report.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Flora Pastorero. We are interrupting programming to bring you this special report. We now know the fate of Jerry Sandusky. The judge has just announced his sentence. We're going to go live now to Dennis Owens. He's live in Bellefonte with the details. Dennis.
Hey, Flora, the sentencing hearing is just wrapping up now. It is being reported that Jerry Sandusky has been sentenced to 30 to 60 years. Judge John Clellan calling that a life sentence for the 68-year-old Jerry Sandusky, who, of course, in June was convicted on 45 counts of child sex abuse, 10 victims over 15 years, 30 to 60 years in state prison for those crimes.
In order to prevail on certain post-sentence items, he needs to continue to maintain his innocence.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to stand by just for a moment there. We understand that Kendra Nichols has come out of the courtroom. We want to go back live now to Center County. We're going to start with Dennis. Dennis.
Okay, Flora and Kendra Nichols, you were in there. Tell us what happened. It was about an 80-minute proceeding.
And that's what we expected. Now, when the judge did the sentencing, he took a sip of water and he said, I'm now going to impose the sentence. He said, looking at you, a 68-year-old man, I'm not going to sentence you to centuries. He said, that would not be practical. And that's when he said, I sentence you 30 to 60 years in prison. And he said, so for the rest of your life. There was silence in the courtroom. There was not much reaction from Jerry Sandusky himself. Dottie immediately started crying, hand to her face, family hugging her. And then the judge went through every count. As he was doing that, Jerry just stood there, no reaction. I felt that he was almost kind of nonchalant about it. When the judge was done, he asked Jerry, do you have any questions? He said no. He told Jerry Sandusky he would stay here at the Center County Prison for 10 days, then be transferred to Camp Hill. Again, just quiet.
And then going into, he'll be in the state sentence, but Jerry Sandusky did speak. You know what was released on the tape. What did he say today? Was there anything different? Was there anything the same from that tape?
There was some bizarre moments. There was almost a moment where he kind of sounded like a coach. He was talking about his family, and he's like, we will fight through this because that's what we do. And he got a little loud, and then he kind of cried a little bit, talking about seeing his grandson, talking about how the thought of not seeing his family, he just can't take that. And then he also talked about what is the purpose of all of this? Why is this happening? And he also referred to himself as, I would like to be a candle for people out there, and maybe because of this, one child won't be hurt.
Did he ever say, I'm sorry? Did he ever say, apologize?
Still maintains his innocence. He also had a kind of a bizarre moment where he talked about when he looks at his cell wall, how it used to be just bleak, but now he looks at his cell wall, he sees hope, he sees thank you cards. He mentioned every once in a while inmates will have outbursts, but he's now looking at this. He says there's a purpose to this, and I find it a little ironic that he felt the purpose is he could save a child from being molested.
Irony, but also a lot of people out there are probably saying, well, wait a minute, that's the guy who's convicted. What about the victims, the people who were hurt by this man? Who spoke? How many spoke?
We heard victim one, he was the second one to take the stand. Young kid, 18 years old. He had just gotten out of high school. He did not.
And he's the one coming out with a book soon, and you're going to see him on ABC here soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
He wrote a letter. He did not want to go and speak. Now, just to give you the layout, when they went up, and the victims would stand at the front of the courtroom, Jerry Sandusky was about 2 people over, and their backs would be to us. So we couldn't see their faces.
But were they talking to Sandusky?
None of them made eye contact with Jerry Sandusky. And a lot of them made reference to, you know, you've never said you're sorry, you won't take responsibility for what you've done, and you smirked and laughed your way through the trial.
Thank you very much. We want to jump to the podium. Carl Rominger from Carlisle, a defense attorney for Jerry Sandusky. Let's take him.
That's a fundamental error. Well, he's ready to start the appellate process.
Why did he choose to release the tape yesterday in the manner in which he did?
My understanding is that tape had been made previously. The release was not under Mr. Sandusky's control, I'm told.
Done in the jail? It was recorded in the jail?
The details of that I am not certain of. I do know that the recording was made ahead of time and the exact release time was not in his control, but my understanding was originally it was not to be released until after sentencing. We have 10 days to file a post-sentence motion. The judge then has 120 days to decide that, and he can extend that up to 30 days on the request of either party. If he doesn't decide it, then we appeal to the Superior Court and it's deemed denied after that 120 or 150-day period. On the other hand, if he decides it within that time period and decides it adversely to either side, then either side has 30 days to go to the Superior Court. Either side could go directly to the Superior Court, but in cases like this, we generally don't. We file post-sentence motions first. And the judge is clearly anticipating there'll be one because he gave 10 days to keep Jerry here in Center County, and I anticipate that if we file a motion, which we will, he'll keep him here longer in order to keep him local and avoid the transportation costs.
Once again, if you're joining us, Jerry Sandusky sentenced to 30 to 60 years. This has been an ABC 27 News special report.